The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, and minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber. So I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing. They're easy to toss in my bag on the go. Plus, they're vegan, gluten free, and HSA, FSA eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with promo code podcast at gruns.co. That's code podcast at gruns.co.
The Dialed In Angling Podcast, presented by OnX Fish, Arneson's Rocky Point Resort, Strike Master, and 13 Fishing. Welcome back to this week's podcast. It's the Minnesota Fishing Opener edition. I couldn't be more excited. Fishing opener to me is a family tradition. It's that unofficial kickoff to summer. It's the official kickoff to my guiding season. I can't say enough about the Minnesota Fishing Opener. I know a lot of people are like, yeah, whatever, big deal. If you're not from Minnesota, it's not a big deal, but it really is. For me, it's always been a big deal. I've enjoyed over the years fishing with family, with friends, planning fishing opener. This year's been a little bit different just because it's been so cold and I haven't been able to get out and do the things that I want to do on the water, especially when it comes to like catch and release bass fishing. I've only done a little bit of it just because it has been so cold. But this weekend, it looks like for the most part, the weather is going to be really good. It looks like we're going to have decent weather for fishing opener, and I know a lot of people like myself are geeked up. On this podcast, we've got a ton of information for you. I've got people chiming in from all over. We got, Rem coming in with the fishing report from Leech Lake, giving his speculation. He's been out checking surface temperatures on Leech Lake. I know he's been doing some fishing up there, getting the resort ready. We got Randon Olson out in Ottertail. He's going to be chiming in with what he's seeing in his neck of the woods. We got Miles in southern Minnesota. We got Brainerd fishing reports. I'm going to give a little bit of a Mille Lacs preview. I'm also going to be talking about how we're going to be fishing because this year is radically different than what we saw last year. Surface temperatures are going to be much colder. I would say we are in a different stage of the spawning, if you will. Last year we were advanced, we were past the spawn. This year, you're going to be seeing fish that are still spawning. You're going to see females that haven't dumped their eggs yet or are in the process of that. You're definitely going to be seeing males that are still spawning, and their locations are going to be different. How you're fishing these fish are going to be different. So I'm going to talk about that. Let's dive into that a little bit and dive into a little bit of how I've been doing a little bit of scouting. It's been really windy especially the last few days. So I haven't been able to get out and do as much scouting as I'd like to do. Every year at this time, I like getting out on lakes like Mille Lacs, Winnie, Leech, wherever I'm at in the state as far as fishing. I do a ton of pan fishing all over the place. But if I'm close to Winnie, if I'm close to Mille Lacs, if I'm close to Leech, lakes that I guide a lot, I like to go out and do some scanning. And you can do this on your own lake. Like if you're coming up to your cabin to put your dock out before fishing opener, this is something that you can do where it's going to help you when you get out there on fishing opener to get on fish right away and stay on those fish. So what I like doing, and I've done it, prior to forward facing sonar, even with 2D sonar, but then really with the onset of side imaging is when I really started doing some scanning. And what I do is I'll get out to an area, let's say Mille Lacs Lake, for example, the north end sand. You've got that big vast sand, and it always seems like the bite in the sand changes. Some years it's over more towards Red Door, or other years it's out in front of Barnacles and then the culvert, and then other years it's the Carlsona Sand, and then other years it seems like over by Fishers there's a lot more fish. And it sounds easy to talk about, but it's really a big, vast area, right? You're talking miles and miles of sand and structure up there on Mille Lacs Lake, and the fish can be anywhere, and they can be at varying depths. Some years they're way up in 9-10 feet of water. Other years they're out towards that. I would consider it the secondary break, where they're out in 21 to 25 feet. This year, they're going to be shallow. What I'm seeing is that there's been a ton of fish shallow. I've been on Leech. I've been on Mille Lacs. So let's dive into kind of where I'm going to be scouting. I'm not going to give specific locations because, Mille Lacs Lake, obviously there's fish that spawn up on the north end. The south end, the same. Last year, it was a really good south end bite in the rocks. It just always is changing on Mille Lacs. Some years the west side is just red hot. You got a ton of sand, a ton of rocks, a ton of structure. That's the beautiful part about Mille Lacs Lake, is just the amount of structure that you have in general. And it always seems like the bite's hotter on one side or the other. So for me, I've been going out, doing a little bit of scanning. Surface temperatures are literally in the 40s, mid 40s right now. These nighttime lows aren't helping. We've had a lot of mornings here where it's been 30 degrees this week. And really, the last few days in particular, it hasn't climbed out of the lower 40s. Yesterday we barely scraped 40. And so surface temperatures are going to remain kind of in that mid 40s range for fishing opener. But that doesn't mean the fishing's going to be bad. What that means is you're going to have to slow down, you're going to have to be quiet, and you're going to have to fish a little bit differently. Now, Mille Lacs is much like Winnie. It's a lot like Leech, where it's gotten super, super clear. The days of just back trolling and fishing right underneath the boat, whether you're using a roach rig, a Lindy rig, even a drift jigging or just snap jigging right underneath the boat, you're not going to catch them like you used to. Fishing memories 15, 20 years ago when you could just, snap jig underneath the boat, drift jig, in 10 feet of water and catching fish right below the boat. On those particular bodies of water, it's not going to happen. You're just not going to catch them. These fish are spooky. The boat's going to be spooking them. Noise is going to be a huge factor this year. And we'll get into noise in a minute, but that fishing right below the boat has to change. Otherwise, you're just not going to catch them. My suggestion to you is it's more of a pitching bite now. You don't need forward-facing sonar. If you listened to the podcast a couple weeks ago, I talked about power fishing, rigging up jigs and minnows, jigs and plastics, where you're casting to fish. That is exactly what you're going to need to do on Mille Lacs. There's going to be a couple different bites that'll be red hot this year on Mille Lacs, on Leech, on Winnie. Two of which, are casting. You can also do some trolling. I know night trolling for a lot of people, going out at midnight. That's what they love doing. It's super effective, especially on these lakes that we've talked about where it's been gin clear and super clear water. Trolling is a real option. Trolling husky jerks at 1.2 miles an hour at night. Even trolling shad raps in the shallows. Trolling these baits at less than 1.5 miles an hour at night, you can catch a ton of fish. If people are going out at midnight and that's how they're fishing, trolling and lighted slip bobbers, definitely the way to go. I know a lot of buddies that still go out at midnight. I always call them in the morning at like 5 a.m. to get a fishing report, 5-6 o'clock in the morning when they're coming in. I like getting the fishing reports from them, seeing how they did at night. And it's amazing. Lakes like Mille Lacs that they can go out and troll at night and catch 30, 40 walleyes in a night, really with ease, not having the greatest of electronics and just going out trolling the reefs. Very, very productive at night. And that's still going to be the case. And I know a lot of people that want to go out and lighted slip bobber fish at night, at midnight, right when it starts. They're diehards. That's going to be effective as well. For me personally, I haven't gone out at midnight for quite some time. I would say since college. College, I know there was a couple years there where we had to get out at midnight, and I remember sitting out there at like 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night to get our spot. And we waited there for 2 hours until that clock struck midnight to get our lighted slip bobber in the water. And I can tell you safely that those days are behind me. I do love fishing at night. Don't get me wrong. It's fun experience, but I like the tradition that we have currently where we go crappie fishing, pan fishing on Friday. We do a fish fry, go to bed at a decent hour, and then we get up at the crack of dawn and we get out to Mille Lacs or wherever we're headed for fishing openers, so that we're on the water before the masses get out there, before the landings get plugged up with people. I like getting on the water, kind of on that 6 o'clock range at the latest. So that means I'm not staying up till midnight. But if you're going out there, best of luck to you. Those would be my two go-tos. Lighted slip bobbers, super fun to see a lighted slip bobber go down, and then trolling, but keeping those trolling speeds under 1.5 miles an hour. For me, it's going to be right around a mile to 1.2 miles an hour. As far as the daytime bite, the jigging bite for me is going to be my go-to. I'm already looking at my desk here. And if you could see what I'm looking at, what I've got strung out here is a bunch of neon moon eye jigs, 1/4 ounce, 1/8 ounce jigs. I've got things ready where I can fish with shiners. I've got some Crush City plastics laid out here, paddle tails. I've got some jerk shads. I've even got some mooch minnows. I'm guessing with the cold water that the paddle tails are going to be sort of my go-to, but I've got them all strung out here. I've got plastics. I've got jigs. I'm retying lines. I've been waiting for this fishing opener, and I've been gearing up for it. I've redone most of my lines, whether it's redoing my braid, redoing my monofilament, but I'm ready with my jigging rods and ready to go. I think it's going to be a fantastic jigging bite. Anytime you have surface temperatures below 50 degrees, that jig bite is usually very, very good. And going back to my original theme about casting to these fish, it's easy to see a pot of fish now where you can pitch to them, keep your boat away from these fish, and cast to them and work along the shoreline breaks. Just being out on Mille Lacs, I'm finding a lot of fish in under 15 feet of water, most of which are under 12 feet of water. Like I said, I haven't casted for them yet. I could tell they're walleyes. I'm seeing that on Mille Lacs. I'm seeing that on Leech Lake. Just the other day on Leech, most of the fish I was seeing were under 6 feet of water. So, they're up there spawning. They're doing their thing. You're going to have to remain quiet. And pitching jigs for me, I love a jig minnow bite, a jig plastics bite, especially an opener. The last few years, it's sort of been my go-to. Last year, even though it was warmer, it seemed like the jig bite on Mille Lacs was better than the bobber bite. Now this year, it may be different. Every year is different. Maybe they don't want that jig moving. So in addition to my jigs rigged up, my neon moon eye jigs, I do have a few hair jigs rigged up. I've got some new bucktail jigs, some lighter bucktails, and 16th ounce and 1/8 ounce bucktails. I have those rigged up, but in addition to that, the jigs and the plastics, I do have some bobber rods rigged up. Yesterday, I kind of restrung all my bobber rods. When I went out crappie fishing, I ran the line out behind the boat. I like to condition my monofilament line, and how I go about rigging my mono on my rods is very meticulous, and I do it every single time. And it goes exactly like this, because I don't like kinks in my line. I don't like, anything that's going to screw up fishing opener, and line can screw it up. If you overspool line, if you put it on wrong, it can really dampen your fishing opener. And for me, I am so geeked up to get out there, adrenaline's running. I don't want to have any issues. And so when I'm rigging up my bobber rods, it goes as follows. I put my monofilament in warm water, not hot water, but warm water in the sink. I start spooling it on my line or on my reel through my rod. I get it all on there. I don't overspool and I don't underspool. There's sort of that happy median on your reel where it's not going to come off and it's not too little where it's going to affect your casting distance. So I don't fill up the spool. I leave a little bit of line left over. And then what I do is I run that line then off of my spool, like either in my house or out my yard is a great area to do that. And I kind of string it out on the grass, and then I kind of reseat that back on the spool again. Now, I don't go as far as rigging the bobbers on yet. What I love doing is just kind of putting those with nothing on them and getting out in the boat. And when I'm going crappie fishing, when I get out of the landing, before I go to my spot, before I take off, I run that monofilament behind my boat, and I run out almost the entire spool of line behind the boat. Not quite to the knot, but I run it out behind the boat, and I kind of just almost let the motor kind of pull out any, let's say, twists that you'd have in there. It sort of stretches that monofilament, and then I reseat it back on my spool. So I reel it back up, reseat it on my spool. Then I'm ready to put my bobbers on, my sniper swivels, and my whole setup. This ensures that you don't have any line twists, you don't have anything going on with your bobber lines, that they're ready to go for a fishing opener, ready to go when you hit the water, that you're not going to have any line twists, anything that's going to screw up your action. In addition to not having those line twists in there, the memory in your line, what that gives you when it's really, really cold out like this is when you're bobber fishing, you can cast that out there and know that your presentation's not down there sitting there spinning or doing something weird. And you know that it's just sitting still in the perfect position where you want it. Now, I will tell you, and I've talked about it on this podcast, if you watched any of my videos, VMC came out with the sniper swivel. This is a weighted swivel that you're going to want to use with your bobber rods this year. And each one of my bobber rods is rigged up with a sniper swivel. Rather than doing, the jig, the 2-split shot, a swivel, a bead, your bobber, and then the slip knot, I have basically simplified my presentation with sniper swivels. And what I love about sniper swivels is you don't get any twisting in your line. You don't have any of that memory issue like I just talked about. It really helps with that, but it also simplifies your presentation where you don't have to deal with split shot, and you don't have to deal with all this stuff, right? So what I like doing is putting like a 16th ounce jig, or even a plain hook sometimes, about a 18-inch to a 2-foot, maybe 2.5-foot leader, the sniper swivel from VMC. You're going to want to check them out. Go online, Fish USA, or wherever you buy your online retail, or even just in stores, and check out these sniper swivels. They come in varying sizes. So depending on how deep you're fishing, how big a bobber you're fishing with, I commonly use like a 16th ounce and 1/8 ounce size, or kind of that realm that I'm fishing, especially in the shallow water. So it'd be my jig, my 18 to 2 feet of line, maybe 2.5 feet, something that's comfortable casting. My swivel, I like putting a bead above my swivel just so that my bobber's not pinching down on my swivel itself. I know a lot of customers in particular will reel that bobber all the way up to your guide. And so having that swivel on there, or having that bead above that swivel, will prevent that bobber from getting stuck on that swivel or screwing up your bobber. But having the bead, the bobber, and then your slip knot, and you're all set. If you're a bobber angler, and a lot of us are now, especially with forward-facing sonar, and especially with it being this cold, I can think back way before forward-facing sonar, where the bobber bite on Mille Lacs saved my fishing opener. It saved my entire opening week, because I was able to catch fish extremely shallow on Mille Lacs with bobbers. And I did the same thing up on Winnie. I did the same thing on Leech. These fish just weren't chasing jigs that well. It seemed like casting in shallow. I don't know if it was spooking them at the time. I didn't have forward-facing sonar, but the bobber bite was king. And so bobbers are very, very effective on cold openers. Anytime where the surface temperature is below 50 degrees, the bobber bite's going to be key. But this year, when you're rigging up your bobber rods, if you're going out doing some last-minute shopping before opener, try to find some sniper swivels. It will simplify your bobber presentation. You're going to love it. You're going to thank me. Trust me, by I would say mid to late June, it's going to be hard to find sniper swivels on the market because they're so going to be so popular. I can think of all the bobber anglers out there, the slip bobber anglers, not just for walleye fishing on Mille Lacs, but all over Leech, Winnie, wherever. The onset of forward-facing sonar. There's so many more people using slip bobbers in different settings. Slip bobbers are great too if you're not going to a big lake like Mille Lacs or Leech or Winnie. If you're on a small lake where these weed walleyes, let's say they're kind of hanging around vegetation from last year. It could be milfoil. It could be cabbage weed. I know this year with the lack of snow that we had, there's still a lot of green weeds out there. I've been checking different lakes and I can't believe how much green vegetation is on some of these lakes. That's where the walleye is going to be, especially up on the north ends, wherever that warm water is. And slip bobber fishing is going to be way more effective presentation for you than even jigging, because you're not going to be hooking that dead vegetation on the bottom, that slime, kind of that ball of goo that you're going to come up with on your jig head. You can slip bobber fish cleanly and you're going to catch a ton of fish. And so those are my two opener presentations. It's going to be jig fishing, jigs and shiners, jigs and plastics. And then, of course, slip bobber fishing, tipping that with the leeches. Now, as far as bait's concerned, I know the bait dealers and the bait shops were starting to get filled up with bait. I know, talking to a few of my friends last weekend as it warmed up, there was some minnow trappers finding some shiner minnows. This week has been cold and it has not been good for trapping bait. I know a lot of people struggling. I think today and tomorrow, hopefully with the sunshine coming out, that these bait dealers are going to be able to get some more shiners, are going to be able to trap some more leeches. This cold water is just not good for finding bait. And so make sure that, as you're heading north, that you're stopping at various bait shops, calling ahead, figuring out who has shiner minnows, who has leeches. Even crawlers can be effective, casting crawlers, particularly under a bobber. Just hanging a crawler there, even half a night crawler works. So, don't panic if you can't find bait and you're freaking out. The other thing is plastics. When you fish like a Crush City plastic, when you fish a plastic on a jig head versus a shiner, especially a paddle tail, it's going to fish much more true. It's going to be a slower presentation for you. And what I like doing is, rather than those big snap jigging and letting it fall, snap jigging, letting it fall, is more of a pop, like pop, let it sit on the bottom, pop. It could be a pop drag where it's more of a drag bite, but keeping that bait down on the bottom a little bit more, not snapping it as aggressively as you normally would be doing, let's say when the surface temps are above 50 degrees. And so don't panic if you're not finding live bait. If you're going to your favorite retailer, you're grabbing some sniper swivels, you're grabbing some last minute supplies for fishing opener, make sure you're grabbing plastics. And this time of year in the shallows, especially on big lakes, like I'm referring to, whether it's, Lake Mille Lacs, Vermilion, Leech, wherever, Red Lake, Lake of the Woods, the walleyes are keying in on shiners, right? And so anything in that white albino shad, sort of that white bluish color, any plastic configuration like that is my absolute go-to. Not to say that perch isn't good, because yes, certainly golds on a lot of small lakes, they're feeding on perch and bluegills, but on the bigger bodies of water, most of my plastic configuration, even my jig head color, is going to be kind of focused around what a shiner minnow looks like. Earlier in the podcast, I was talking about fishing bucktail jigs. Bucktails, any sort of hair jig, I'm going to go with that white, blue, VMC bucktail jig. They have a new color. It's that whitish blue. It's that shiner color. That is already tied on my line, ready to go to deploy for fishing opener. Anything in that shiner realm is what I'm going to be fishing this year because the surface temperatures are so cold. Now, if I shift gears, like I said, I go to a small lake, whether it's a Gull Lake in Brainerd or it's a small lake anywhere across Minnesota where these fish are more focused on the weed lines, maybe on the inside edge of the weed lines where I'm casting to them. Yeah, it's okay to go to a perch style color, but even those lakes have shiners. And so, between the perch and the shiner plastics, that's going to be my go-to. So if you're out there doing some last minute shopping, definitely picking up those two natural colors. That's what I have tied on. That will be my go-to. As far as temperatures, most surface temperatures, I have not been. You're going to have to tune into the podcast with Miles down in southern Minnesota. I know talking to some of my friends, let's say down in St. Cloud area, even down towards the Twin Cities, surface temperature is going to be much warmer than they are in northern Minnesota. And so you'll have to kind of base your, sort of your jigging cadence, where you're fishing, your depth on that. But if you're getting to your destination, let's say a few days early, if you're going crappie fishing like we're going to be doing tomorrow, certainly when you get out, rather than just racing to the spot where you're going to be crappie fishing in the shallows, scan some of those edges, scan some of those weed lines, scan some of those rock piles that you're going to be fishing, and take a look, see where the fish are located. Even though you're not allowed to fish for walleyes the day before opener, there's nothing on the books that says you can't go out and scan for them. And I'm telling you, if you spend time scanning for these fish and spend a day early, you're gonna be miles ahead of all the other anglers out there on opening day that are rushing to get out there. They don't know where the fish are at. They're kind of going from boat to boat. If you can scan, you can get them dialed in before you decide to get out there and fish on Saturday. You're gonna be miles ahead of everybody. I love doing it. Nothing better than jumping in the boat, grabbing a few snacks with the kids, and just doing a little bit of scanning before you go crappie fishing. Super, super fun. It's sort of like, the days leading up to deer season. I like driving around, seeing bucks chasing does out in fields. I like seeing deer activity. It's no different for fishing opener. I love getting out, seeing these fish, seeing where they're at, checking out surface temperatures, and then Saturday morning, I'm ready to go. I feel like I know exactly where I'm going to go. I'm not stressed out as far as scanning for fish when I get out there. If you can do that, you're going to catch way more fish than the other anglers that are out there. Trust me. Hey, stay tuned. We got more Dialed In Angling. We're going to take a quick break. When I get back, we've got more fishing opener discussion. And then, of course, at the end of this podcast, we've got a lot of great fishing reports, a lot of people chiming in, a lot of people like me that are just absolutely jacked up for fishing opener. Can't wait to get this season underway. We got more Dialed In Angling after this.
Arneson's Rocky Point Resort in northern Minnesota offers a little something for everyone. Nestled on Lake of the Woods South Shore, it provides easy access to 14 remarkable reefs. Serious anglers know that Arneson's offers some of the best fishing, charter fishing, and small boat fishing options, all supported by the largest protected marina on the lake's south shore. Accommodation selections range from 1 to 5 bedrooms. Equipped with all the modern conveniences, guests can enjoy a delightful dining experience and stunning lake views at the Rock Harbor Lodge, an on-site full-service bar and restaurant. The two beaches provide hours of fun for the whole family. Whether you're seeking an idyllic fishing spot or a relaxing vacation, Arneson's Rocky Point has everything you need. Check them out at arnesonsresort.com. OnX Fish is the best tool I have ever used for finding new lakes to target. Quickly filter lakes by species, then select trophy potential, high abundance, keeper potential, or high stocking effort to find the fish you're after in the size and the numbers you are trying to catch. Download from the App Store today to get research tools for the serious anglers and beginners alike, giving you the data to target the right lakes and the confidence to get there. Use tools like recent imagery, fishing hotspot data, or the best-in-class weather features that call out current wind, weather, barometer, moon phase, majors and minors, along with precip and more. OnX Fish is a phenomenal tool both on and off the water for discovering new fishing opportunities, many of which you'd never known existed. Download OnX Fish Midwest today. the app that is changing the game on ice and open water.
Okay, let's get into another topic I want to talk about for fishing opener, and that's just noise, sound, being a good person at the boat landing. I'm not trying to preach, but like it seems like every year everybody's excited to get out for fishing opener, but inevitably you get to the launch and there's that angler that never checked their batteries, their boat's dead, they're plugging up the landing. They back down. Now they're loading all their fishing gear and their tackle and they're yelling at their buddy. Don't be that guy. When you get to the landing, dump in, move your boat out of the way, be courteous, help others. Maybe someone's struggling. I'm always helping people at the boat ramp. It seems like some people are trying to do it by themselves. Some people are nervous. Some people have kids, wives, whatever it may be. Have a little bit of patience, help others, and, just don't be that guy at the boat landing. No one wants to be that person where you're backing down and plugging up the entire ramp and so nobody can get through. In addition to that, I'd say the number one thing, going back to what I talked about earlier about spooky fish, about it being cold, even me running around scanning for fish with my big motor, I could see I was spooking walleyes. So imagine you're fishing a spot, you get it inevitably, you're on Winnie, you're on Leech, you're on Mille Lacs, everybody's kind of fishing the same area. Do not run through those fish with your big motor. Use your trolling motor. Go way out and around those fish. I can always remember back in the day where everybody would do a drift and then they'd rip back up and do the drift again and rip back up and they'd rip through those fish. Now with forward-facing sonar, we can see how much those fish are spooked and impacted by motor noise and people running through those fish and just boat noise. So for me, if I'm in an area where it starts getting congested with boats and I can see that these fish are spooking out as a result of the boats, they're not going to bite. And so I move on and I go find new fish. And that's the beauty of being able to fish with forward-facing sonar. That's the beauty of open water fishing. You can try to get away from some of these anglers. Now, opener's a little more challenging because there are so many people on the lake, but where you can, stay away from people, keep the noise down. Again, don't be that guy out there just ripping up there with your outboard motor and ripping through all the fish and ripping through the boats. Be courteous, go around. It takes 2 seconds to go way out and around the boats. And just being a good person on the water, and dealing with as many people as there are on the water. And yes, somebody might tick you off on the water where you just want to race right by them. Be the bigger person, just go out and around them and let bygones be bygones. It's fishing opener and just go out and have fun, build memories, build family traditions. Also, you've got kids in the boat that are learning from you to be a boat person and to be a good person on the water. And so try to keep the noise down, try to keep the noise factor to a minimum, and really just trying to find fish on your own. I think this year, because the fish are going to be so shallow, you're going to find fish in locations that are much shallower than people are going to be looking for, if you will. I know me on Leech Lake the other day, I was seeing fish, like I said, under 6 feet of water. I saw a lot of walleyes in 4 feet of water on forward-facing sonar. Mille Lacs Lake's going to be the same way. Winnebagosh, same thing. You're going to find a lot of fish, especially these shorelines that have been windblown for the last 3 to 4 days, where these fish are going to be piled in these areas. And I found it yesterday. I found an area where there was a ton of shiner minnows that had been blown into a shoreline, and there was a lot of fish up in that 6 feet of water. So pitching to those fish, whether you're using a bobber, jigging a minnow, jigging a plastic, but pitching to those fish, keeping the noise to a minimum, and keeping your own boat away from those fish, not just an outboard motor, but your boat itself. Keeping a good distance where you're a casting distance. For me, if you can see them on your forward-facing sonar at 50, 60, even 70 feet, slow way down, even spot locking if you can at 50 or 60 feet away from those fish, you're going to be able to catch them. If you start breaching that 20, 30 foot range, it's already too late, especially in this shallow water. The way that these lakes are so clear right now, if you get up that close to those fish, you're going to have issues. Another overlooked destination for a fishing opener. I talked to a buddy yesterday that's heading up to Lake of the Woods. I talked to another buddy, obviously going to Red Lake, Mille Lacs, whatever, but Lake of the Woods, there's going to be a lot of fish still in the river. There's a lot of options on Lake of the Woods for getting up there, getting away from traffic. Some of these smaller lakes too, if you can get out there super early, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, get your locations pinned in. And you know what? I'm not 100% sure, but a lot of times when we have these really cold openers, especially these cold mornings, the fish aren't necessarily snapping right away in the morning. It takes a little bit for that sun to get higher in the sky, things to heat up a little bit, and then those fish to get active. So in the morning when you're fishing, just be conscious to fish really, really slow. It's going to be a minnow drag. It could be a bobber bite. If you're pitching plastics, it could be that drag bite, but just fishing a little bit slower in the morning. As things start to heat up towards the afternoon, you're going to be able to fish a little bit more aggressive. If you do that, if you stay away from the boats, you're going to have a great and successful opener. Hey, stay tuned. We got some great fishing reports for you. A lot of great contributors this week. Everybody is jacked up for fishing opener. I hope you have a great, successful fishing opener. We'll take one more break. We're going to cut to the fishing opener portion of this podcast. A lot of great input from some of my favorite anglers on the planet. They're gearing up for fishing opener as well. They've got a lot of great information for you. Stay tuned. We got fishing reports on the way from the Dialed In Angling podcast.
What is going on, guys? Miles from MVP Guide Service coming at you from the Mankato, Waterville, Faribault area. Just checking in with you. Pre-walleye opener. Getting real excited, guys. It's about time. I was just out on the water today. I was seeing about mid 50s for the water temps. So things are looking up for the weekend. I've been doing a little window shopping, looking around in the traditional haunts. In our area, weeds are king, guys. I'm looking for outside weed edges and inside weed edges, especially if they are located next to spawning flats, or if you have sand that runs right up next to the weed edge. Those are key locations, or if you have sprinkling a few rocks as well. As far as the baits go, I love hair jigs at this time of year. Quarter ounce is the go-to. Sometimes I go down to an eighth. I like tipping those with either a paddle tail or sometimes a minnow. And I'm just snapping them out of the weeds. That gets some good reaction strikes. Also, an eighth ounce jig, short shank with a minnow, or a longer shank jig with Nightcrawler. That's going to be, I pitch those on the weed edges. And then I love a good slip bobber bite as well. A slip bobber tipped with a leech. That's going to be walleye candy for the weekend, guys. So hopefully that helps put a few more walleyes in your boat. Definitely put your electronics to use and cover water until you find them. And if you guys are looking for a guide trip, you can hit me up at 507-236-2027 or check me out on Facebook, MVP Guide Service. So thanks for including me, Tony. Hope you guys have a great opener. Thanks.
Hey guys, Remington Moran here with Elite Angling Adventures up here on Leech Lake, coming at you with a little fishing preview. We got the biggest holiday of the year, Minnesota Fishing Opener, coming up this weekend. And, I think it's going to be a good opener. A little nervous with water temps. We're a little cold yet. It's mid to high 40s. I haven't really, if you get way back in the deep bays or the shallow bays looking for panfish, I have seen stuff upwards of 50, but I think it pretty much everywhere on the main lake is, mid to high 40s, which should be okay because it's stable. We've had super stable weather. It's been cold stable, but it has been stable, and I think that helps. I think most of the fish are done spawning, and I think we're going to catch a bunch of fish on opener up here on Leech. Key areas to look for: your typical Walker Narrows, West Goose Flats, Big Hardwood, Second Duck Point. All the sand. Find your sand flats and that are wind blown, and go at them with an eighth ounce jig and a spot tail if you can find them. If not, I
last fall I was catching them pretty good on a Crush City plastic, or if you can't find spot tails, big rainbow, big fathead, anything like that'll work. But I do think fishing slow is going to be a key with this with this cold water. So good luck, everyone. Stay safe and have some fun.
Trigger with Tier Guide Series here in the Brainerd Lakes area. Fishing's been pretty good despite this little cold front that we've had. Crappies are up in the shallow bays. Water temps in that mid to low 50s using microplastics and small hair jigs underneath floats to get those. Opener is here, so the water temp on the main lake is in that high 40s to low 50s. Thinking the walleyes are going to be in that 10 to 14 foot of water range. My three go-to baits are tungsten jigs tipped with shiners, if you can find them. Shiners are going to be hard to find this year, is one of what I'm hearing, but rainbows and fatheads work just as good. I love using hair jigs, bouncing those off the bottom, and jerk baits. This is Trigger Roach. We'll see you in the next one.
What's going on, guys? Brandon Olson here with Lockjaw Guide Service and Ottawa County Fishing Report. It's cold out today. We got the Lund inside. We're getting some stuff ready. Opener's coming. And one big thing this year, shiners are going to be in short supply, at least until the season gets started. We got some more weather coming next week. We should get a good push of shiners coming in. But for opening weekend, it's going to be kind of tough finding a few. So what does that mean? Well, we got tons and tons of plastics out there to offer. Tons of different companies you can get plastics from. They all work really well. Another really good option is jerk baits. Jerk baits can be exceptionally good, especially when the water's cold like this. Work with a nice, good long pause in it. And don't be afraid to work those baits really high. One other really, really good option this time of year that kind of gets overlooked is spinner baits. It's one of my favorite early season baits, especially when that shiner run's running a little late and those fish are still following those shiners around. Spinner bait's a great imitation of a bunch of shiners. And you'd be surprised just how much fun you can have through tossing a spinner bait up on some of them shallow sand flats. So speaking of sand flats, that's kind of what I'm going to be looking for, anywhere from that 2 to 8 feet of water. Obviously a jig and minnow will work great, but look for those different baits. Don't be afraid to stay away from the shiners if you can't find any. Plenty of good fishing out there this weekend. And remember, if the lake you're on is not producing, try jumping into a shallower lake. It's going to be a touch warmer. Those fish will be a little farther along. Should increase your chances of having a great opener. If you guys want to come out fishing with me, you can give us a call at 218-640-0158. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook or lockjawguideservice.com.
All right, guys, it's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in once again to this week's podcast. I can't tell you how excited I am to get out fishing with my dad, with my son. Fishing openers here. It's a family tradition. I can't wait to go make memories and get this season started. Man, to feel a walleye clunk a jig, to watch a bobber go down, to have a fish hit a crankbait. The time is now. I hope you guys can make your own memories. I hope all of the fishing reports from our contributors helped you with the success for your fishing opener. I hope you're ready. I hope your boat's ready to go. And good luck to everybody out there. Next week, we're going to have a lot of insight as far as what's working, what people are catching them on, what to look for, where's the hot bite. There's always storylines that emerge from fishing opener, whether it be on Mille Lacs Lake, it could be on Leech, it could be on Vermilion, it could be on Red Lake, it could be Lake of the Woods. But we're going to find out from all of our contributors. We're going to have some people on the podcast next week talking about fishing opener. I know for me, I'm going to be on Mille Lacs for opener, but then right after that, I'm heading up to Leech Lake. I'm going to be over on Winnie. I cannot wait to get out there, do a little spring walleye fishing. The good part about having a cooler opener, it seems like if you love jig fishing, if you love fishing shallow in general, that shallow water bite should last a lot longer than it did last year. So good luck to everybody. Hopefully you're going out to make memories with your family, with your friends. Have a safe and happy Minnesota fishing opener. Until next week, I'm Tony Roach. Good luck on the water. This has been the Dialed In Angling Podcast.